Hey y'all, I'm not sure if you'll be able to hear me or not. I'll have to check the audio on this after I make it. I was going to talk to y'all about what I know about my mother. I know that my mother was born Maxine Mary Netto. She was French. Not the Parisian French, but Canadian French. I used to love to listen to my mother talking to her sisters and her mom and all her aunts. Everybody in the family spoke French. Now, she never taught us kids French. We were very little when we moved away. When we moved away from Maine. Now, my mother was born in Caribou, just like I was. A rustic county, I believe they called it. She was one of 4 children. She was the oldest. She had 3 sisters, and she had a little brother. Now, my grandfather, when the kids were really little, got syphilis. Back then, y'all, they did not know how to treat syphilis. He ended up in a home for the insane. Not good. Now, my grandmother had been a stay-at-home mom, and she had to scramble trying to take care of 4 children. And what finally ended up happening is the girls got placed into foster care. Now, back then, y'all, it meant that you went to live on a farm with a family, and they usually worked you like a dog. My mom told me about how that was, scrubbing wood floors on her hands and knees, even when they weren't dirty, working on the farm with all the farm animals. They worked from the time they got up in the morning until they went to bed at night. There was no TV, there was no radio, there was nothing. My grandmother kept my Uncle Kedrick home with her. He was the baby. Eventually, when the girls got old enough, they went back home to live with my grandmother. Now, my grandmother became a waitress, and when the girls were old enough, they started working too. So everybody contributed to the family, and they were very, very poor. My grandmother sewed all their clothes, and then when the girls were about 12, they started sewing, and they sewed their own clothes. They wore hand-me-downs, whatever they could get. Now, my mother was married 3 times. She married her first husband. His nickname was Jug, J-U-G. Now, they called him that because he drank so much. And she had my 2 sisters by him. Then she married her second husband, John Paul, and she had myself and my little brother. Come on over, hun. Don't let me get in your way. And then she divorced my dad, and she married one more time my stepdad. And he really raised us. Now, I know that my mother drank from an early age, and she smoked when she was very young. I know that she was a waitress a lot, and I know that she also worked as a nurse's aide in a home for the criminally insane. They were not the most violent of the violent, but they could at times be very uncontrollable. And she told me stories about how a lot of them had to be restrained down in their beds or wear straitjackets. She told me that this hospital that she worked at had one of those big old staircases where it went up one side, went across, and then came back down the other side of this huge room. And she said occasionally one of the patients would throw feces down on the nurses, or they would pee off the second story. My mother had a really hard life. She did the best she could, and she always managed to take care of myself and my little brother. I spent a lot of time taking care of my little brother when my parents were working. I think that's why I got so bossy. Yep, you can go from 55 to 20 in just a heartbeat on this freeway. But there are so many things that I don't know about my mom. And I wish I could sit down with her and ask her a ton of questions. Now, we had a love, hurt, hate relationship. Now, I never hated my mother, and she never hated me. But boy, oh boy, let me tell you, there were times when my mother hurt me so bad. Once, I remember very clearly. Now, y'all, I was, let's say, chaste when I got married to my first husband. I had never been with another man, and we got married, and he kept throwing my birth control pills away so that I would get pregnant, and I didn't want to get pregnant because I did not love him and he was mean. I did a video on that. But I remember I was staying with my parents and I was big pregnant. And my mother and I got into it about something. I don't remember what it was. But she called me a whore. That can still bring tears to my eyes, you guys. I was always a good girl. I had a smart mouth on me, but I was a good girl. They never had any problems with me. And for her to call me that broke my heart. And I remember it was pouring down rain. We lived in Arkansas, and it was pouring down rain, and it was at night, and I left the house. Must have been in the summer because I didn't take a coat. And I walked for almost 3 miles in the pouring rain to get away from my mother. And finally, my dad caught up with me and made me come back home. That hurt, y'all. That hurt a lot. Now, my mother was not cuddly, huggy, I love you, good job. I don't remember any of that. I don't remember it. Maybe it was there and I don't know, y'all. Now, we didn't get slapped around. She popped me in the mouth more than once, but I deserved it. We didn't get big spankings or thrown around or anything like that. We had plenty of food. We had clothes, cheap clothes, hand-me-down clothes, but we had them. But man, oh man, sometimes that woman could really hurt me. I remember I was going to get married to my third husband, my high school sweetheart. And I wanted to we were going to get married at my mother's house, and she was living with a girlfriend of hers. They had rented this little house. She had divorced my dad by then, my stepdad. And I wanted to spend the night there because we were getting married there, and I could get up and I could take a shower and primp and put on my little dress. She told me no, there wasn't room for me. That cut me like a knife, y'all. They each had their own bedroom, and there was a nice big couch in the living room. But she told me, no, I don't have room. Then one time, I stopped by her work in the late afternoon. She was about to get off. She was managing a liquor store. And my baby, my oldest son, was a baby. And I stopped by there and I said, hey, Mom, why don't we go to the mall for a little while when you get off? She said, no, hon, I'm really beat today. I've been on my feet all day. So I said, okay, well, we'll do it another time. So I got a girlfriend and we went to the mall. And who should I see there but my mother with her best friend? Y'all, that hurt. That hurt me a lot. Then she was getting ready to move back to Maine from Arkansas. She was going to move back to Maine. And so it was about a week or so before she was going to leave, and my older sisters were packing up a U-Haul for her and getting her ready to go. And so I called her, and I was working for a dentist at the time, and I said, hey, Mom, let's go and have lunch. We might not have another chance before you leave. So she said, okay, and we set it for a couple days later in the week. And I had a little portable sewing machine that I'd been using, and it belonged to her. So I showed up on the day, and I brought her little sewing machine with me. And I said, Mom, how come you're not dressed? And I had taken a long lunch so that we could go to lunch together. I said, why aren't you dressed? She goes, oh, hon, I just don't feel very good today. And I said, well, okay. So I went in to use her bathroom. And this was a tiny little house, y'all. And you could hear through the walls. And the phone rang. It was in the kitchen, next to the bathroom. And I heard my mother say to my sister, Deborah's here right now, but she'll be leaving in a few minutes, and then I'll get ready and meet you. She was talking about meeting my sister at a restaurant in town. Now, y'all, I'm going to tell you, I did not speak to my mother again for almost 10 years. I finally had enough of my mother hurting me. And I don't know why. I do not know why, y'all, she treated me like that. I was a good daughter. I was there anytime she needed me. So I don't know, y'all, why she was like that. But this video is long enough. And I'll finish up on another video. And I know a lot of this has to do with me and my mother. I wish that I could have known her better and that I could have understood her. Anyway, y'all, do something fun today, and I'll wrap this up in another video. Bye, y'all.